Welcome, dear listeners, to another mystery from the casebook of Hercule Poirot, as recalled by his faithful friend Captain Hastings. Today, we present Hercule Poirot and the Curse of the Crimson Cameo. A priceless little jewel, red as a drop of blood, arrives at a country house under a whispering cloud of superstition. Before the weekend is out, a man lies dead. A secret set of letters vanishes, and every guest insists the curse has chosen its victim. Before we begin, tell us where in the world are you listening from. Leave a comment below. Now settle in and let us see if the little grey cells can solve this one. Part 1. Chapter 1. The Cameo at Ashridge Hall. It was in the autumn of 1932, when the plane trees along the embankment had begun to turn the colour of old gold, that Poirot received an invitation which he read twice, frowned at, and then placed upon the breakfast table with a certain air of affronted dignity. I was opposite him, busying myself with marmalade and a newspaper, and I confess that nothing delights me more than the prospect of a few days in the country. The city, for all its bustle, has a way of pressing in upon one, and I have always been a man who breathes better under a broad sky. Poirot tapped the envelope with one fastidious finger. "Regard, Hastings. It is from Lady Ashridge. You remember, the widow, the one who wears too much scent and believes that symmetry is a moral virtue." "You mean the lady with the magnificent garden terraces? I met her at that charity fete in Kensington." "Precisely. She has, as you say, the terraces, also the ambition to gather about her house all that is amusing, all that is fashionable, and all that is dangerous. She writes to invite me for a weekend at Ashridge Hall. There will be a house party, there will be a duel, and there will be nonsense." "Duel?" I repeated, my ears pricking up. "What duel?" Poirot's moustache quivered. "The Crimson Cameo." I had, of course, heard something of it. One cannot read even the lighter journals without encountering references to that famous trinket. A carved cameo, ancient, set in a mount of gold and black enamel. The stone itself was of a deep claret hue, and the face upon it, a profile of some Roman lady, seemed almost to swim in the red like a ghost in wine. It was said to have belonged to a notorious courtesan, to have been given by a prince, to have passed through revolutions, duels and scandals. There were always those, too, who spoke of a curse, because of course there must always be a curse when there is a duel and a newspaper man with a hunger for ink. "Lady Ashridge has acquired it," I said eagerly. "Or so I read. There was an auction." "Yes, she has acquired it, and now she wishes to show it, to display it, to make the world envy her. She speaks of threats, of notes, of a sense that the duel brings with it malheur. She begs that Hercule Poirot will come to reassure her, to arrange, to prevent a robbery." "Then we shall go," I declared at once. Poirot regarded me with a glance that was half amusement, half rebuke. "Hastings, you decide already. It is good. It is like the little boy who sees the jam and forgets that there is the spoon and the manners." "But my dear fellow," I protested, "if there are threats, why not? Besides, it will do you good. Fresh air, a little sport." "A little sport," repeated Poirot with distaste. "You mean that you will rush about with guns and dogs and muddy boots? Me, I will sit in the salon and observe the souls. Each has his secret. Each has his vanity. And sometimes, mon ami, it is the vanity that kills." He did, however, accept, for Poirot is not, despite his protests, invitations that offer him both comfort and a stage. By the following afternoon, we were installed in a first-class compartment, rattling out of London towards the mild green of the Shires. Poirot wore a new suit of grey. His collar was immaculate, and he carried with him a small bottle of his own tisane, as if he were embarking upon an Arctic expedition. Ashridge Hall lay at the end of a beech avenue. It was one of those houses that has grown by slow degrees, like an old family. There was a Tudor wing, mellow brick, and beyond it a Georgian frontage with pillars and a fanlight that looked as if it had been polished by angels. Inside, Lady Ashridge had imposed upon it the latest fashion. There were Art Deco mirrors, lacquered tables, and rugs of startling geometrical patterns. One might have expected, at any moment, a jazz band to burst from behind an ancestral portrait. Lady Ashridge herself swept down upon us in a cloud of perfume. "Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, how good of you, how simply too delicious." She seized Poirot's hands and squeezed them as if she were wringing out a cloth. "You have no idea. I'm at my wit's end." Poirot bowed. "Madame, you have a great many wits. It is why you are at the end of them." She laughed, not entirely understanding, and turned to me with a flutter of lashes. "Captain Hastings, you look so well. I do hope you will enjoy yourself. We are a small party, only those who matter. Come, tea first. We must all be together." The drawing-room was a vast, light place, with tall windows looking upon lawns that fell away to a ha-ha and distant woods. The guests were already assembled, and as we entered, I received that first impression, which is so often the seed of later recollection: laughter, the clink of china, the murmur of polite voices. Yet beneath it a tension, like a violin string tuned a shade too tight. Lady Ashridge introduced us, and I noted each person. There was Sir Lionel Ashridge, her stepson, a man of about 40, handsome in a tired way, with the look of one who has been expected to shine and has found it an exhausting business. His wife, Verity, was a slim, pale woman with eyes that watched rather than welcomed. She wore pearls, but they did not soften her. There was Miss Celia March, a young lady of the house-party type, all bright curls and laughter, with the sort of charm that sets men scrambling to fetch cushions. There was Major Rupert Blake, moustached and bluff, with a booming voice and a slight limp. There was Dr. Aldous Trent, the family physician, neat, dry and scholarly, with pince-nez and the air of a man who distrusts emotions. There was also a foreign guest, Monsieur Etienne Duval, an elegant Frenchman with a cigarette holder and hands like a pianist. Lastly, there was the Reverend Stephen Lorne, vicar of the neighbouring village, a mild man with kind eyes who looked as though he had wandered into the wrong railway carriage. As tea was served, Lady Ashridge spoke in a lowered voice that nevertheless carried to everyone. "It is such a dreadful thing, such a sinister thing, this cameo. I know people laugh, but I have never felt anything like it. From the moment it came into the house, there have been mishaps. A pane of glass shattered for no reason. My maid cut her hand and bled on the carpet. And then, last night, this." She produced a folded piece of paper. Poirot accepted it delicately, like a surgeon taking a swab. He read it without changing expression, then handed it to me. The message was printed in awkward capitals. "The Crimson Cameo is cursed. It will take what is owed. Give it up or pay." "Who would do such a thing?" I exclaimed. "A silly attempt at blackmail." "Captain Hastings," murmured Verity Ashridge, and there was a curious edge to her voice. "You will find that silly attempts have a habit of becoming serious." Sir Lionel laughed shortly. "Rot. Someone wants to frighten my stepmother out of showing off her new toy. Probably the village boys." Major Blake snorted. "Village boys do not talk of what is owed. That sounds like a man with a grievance. Or a woman." Celia March clapped her hands. "How thrilling! A curse! A jewel! I adore it. Lady Ashridge, you must show it to us at dinner." Lady Ashridge's eyes gleamed. "Yes, I shall. That is why I brought you all. I want witnesses. I want people to see that I am not frightened. Monsieur Poirot is here. He will see that nothing happens." Poirot sipped his tisane. His gaze moved, slow and thoughtful, from face to face. "Madame," he said gently, It is often when one insists that one is not frightened that one is most afraid. A little silence fell. In it, I heard, from the corner near the window, the faint click of a typewriter. I turned, surprised, and saw a small writing desk. Seated at it, half hidden by a screen, was a woman I had not been introduced to. She looked up quickly, startled, and Lady Ashridge flushed. "Oh, yes, I forgot. This is Miss Dora Henslow, my secretary. She is helping with correspondence. There is so much. Notes, letters, arrangements." Miss Henslow inclined her head. She was not pretty, but there was something arresting about her. Her hair was sleek, her mouth firm, and her eyes, though quiet, seemed to hold a great deal. Poirot bowed to her with a courtesy that was almost old-fashioned. "Mademoiselle." Her gaze met his for a second, and in that second I had the odd impression that she was measuring him, as one might measure a tool. Tea ended. People drifted away. Poirot and I were shown to our rooms. Mine looked upon the east lawn, where a sundial stood like a solemn judge. Poirot's was opposite, for he insists on order and proximity. As I unpacked, I heard a faint murmur in the corridor and stepped out. A door opposite was ajar. Through it I saw Verity Ashridge and Dr. Trent. They were speaking in low voices. Verity's face was very white. "You must," she was saying, "you must see that it does not happen." Trent's voice was calm. "My dear Mrs. Ashridge, you are overwrought. There is no it. There is only fear. And fear can kill," she whispered. Then she saw me, and the door closed quietly. I confess I felt a prickling at the back of my neck. There is a sense one gets, sometimes, when one enters a house where something is wrong. Ashridge Hall was beautiful, comfortable, full of servants and polished wood. And yet, in the spaces between laughter, there was that tension again, the violin string. That evening, as the gong sounded, and we descended, I found Poirot in the hall, examining with interest a tall Art Deco mirror. "Admiring yourself?" I teased. "No, Hastings, I admire the mirror. It is too perfect. It shows all, and yet it shows nothing of the soul. In a house like this, one must look beyond the surface." Madame Ashridge loves surfaces. At dinner, Lady Ashridge wore a gown of silver and a necklace that might have paid for a cottage. She waited until the soup had been cleared, then signalled to a footman. Upon a velvet cushion, he brought in a small case. "The Crimson Cameo," breathed Celia. Lady Ashridge opened the case. Inside lay the jewel, glowing darkly, as if it had a life. "It is magnificent," said Duval softly, in French. "C'est magnifique." Lady Ashridge lifted it and pinned it to her dress. Against the silver, the red stone looked almost black. There was a murmur of admiration. I saw, however, that Verity Ashridge did not look at the jewel. She looked at Lady Ashridge's throat, as if she were imagining something tightening there. Poirot watched, not the cameo but the hands. Lady Ashridge's fingers trembled slightly as she fastened the clasp. Miss Henslow at the sideboard made a note. Dr. Trent adjusted his pince-nez. Major Blake's eyes narrowed. Sir Lionel drank his wine too quickly. Reverend Lorne looked away, uncomfortable. And in that moment, I could not have told you why, but I knew that the weekend had begun in earnest. Chapter 2. A death in the library. It was shortly after 11 when the first disturbance occurred. We had been in the drawing-room, where Celia had insisted upon playing the piano, and Duval had smoked and made epigrams. Poirot had arranged the chairs into a pleasing symmetry, to Lady Ashridge's amusement, and had then sat with his hands folded, listening more than speaking. Lady Ashridge, wearing the cameo, seemed to preen beneath the attention. Yet every so often her hand went to it, touching it as if to reassure herself it was still there. Then came a sudden commotion in the hall. A servant entered, pale and breathless. "Milady, Sir Lionel, it is Mr. Farrow." "Farrow," repeated Sir Lionel sharply. "My solicitor. What is it?" "He is in the library, sir. He has fallen." Lady Ashridge rose, the cameo flashing like a dark eye. "Fallen? What do you mean, fallen? Bring him here." But the servant shook his head, and in that shake was something that made my stomach drop. Poirot rose at once. "Come, Hastings." We followed the servant down a corridor to the library. It was a handsome room, lined with books and heavy with the smell of leather. A green shaded lamp cast a pool of light upon a great desk. On the carpet by the desk lay a man. He was on his side, one arm flung out, as if reaching for something. His face was a curious grey, and there was a smear of red at the corner of his mouth. Dr. Trent knelt at once, fingers on the man's wrist. After a moment, he looked up. "He is dead." Lady Ashridge gave a little cry and clutched at her throat. The cameo trembled. "Dead. Here. In my house." Sir Lionel's face had hardened. "Who is he? How did he come in?" The servant stammered. "He arrived just after 10, sir. He asked to see you. You were with the guests. He said it was urgent. Miss Henslow brought him to the library. She said he would wait." All eyes turned to Miss Henslow, who stood very still in the doorway. Her face was composed, but her hands were clenched. "I did," she said quietly. "He said he must speak to Sir Lionel tonight. He would not say why. I brought him here. I left him with brandy." Poirot's eyes flicked to the side table where a decanter stood, and one glass half empty. Dr. Trent spoke again. "There is a smell," he said. "Bitter almonds." "Cyanide," I exclaimed. Poirot laid a hand on my arm. "Do not jump, mon ami. The little grey cells. Let us see first what there is to see." He moved nearer the body. He did not touch, but his gaze took in everything with a rapid, almost tender precision. The man's suit, the polished shoes, the papers scattered near his hand. "What are those?" I asked. Sir Lionel bent and snatched them up. His face changed as he read, a flare of anger, then something like fear. "Nothing," he said harshly. "Just routine." Poirot's voice was soft. "Routine which makes you tremble, Sir Lionel." Sir Lionel's eyes flashed. "You have no right." Poirot inclined his head. "I have no right, but I have the interest. I am here because there is talk of threats and curses. And now, in the library, there is a dead man. It is perhaps not the curse. It is perhaps the hand of a person." Lady Ashridge sank into a chair, her perfume heavy in the air. "This is what I feared. The cameo. The curse has begun," Reverend Lorne murmured. "God preserve us," under his breath. Major Blake strode to the door. "We must send for the police." Sir Lionel nodded curtly. "Yes. Get Inspector Keene from Market Ashridge. He will come." While a servant ran, Poirot turned to Dr. Trent. "Doctor, you say cyanide. How sure?" Trent lifted the glass on the table, sniffed, and set it down with care. "Not absolute, but the smell, the rapidity, the colour. It is likely. I shall make a proper examination." Poirot nodded. "And you, Hastings, you will recall. Who left the drawing-room? Who was absent?" I confess, at that moment I was in a whirl, yet I tried to marshal my thoughts. "Lady Ashridge remained," I said. "So did Celia and Duval. Reverend Lorne went out for a moment. Major Blake went to fetch his cigarette case. Verity left early. Dr. Trent was called away to see a servant with a headache." Verity spoke from the doorway. She had returned, her face set. "I did not leave early. I went to my room. I have a headache. Celia gave a little squeal. How awful! How dreadfully exciting! I mean, terrible. Poirot's eyes settled on the body again. Then, very carefully, he pointed. See, Hastings, the hand. It reaches. For what? On the carpet, inches from the dead man's fingers, lay a small object. A button. Black, glossy, with a faint gold rim. It looked as if it had been torn from a coat. Poirot took it up with his handkerchief. A button, I said. From someone's clothing. Mais oui. And perhaps the clue, perhaps not. In a house like this, there are many coats with buttons. But it is a beginning. Order and method. Lady Ashridge suddenly gave a sharp cry. My cameo! She clutched her dress. The cameo was gone. For a heartbeat the room froze. Then voices erupted. It has been stolen! Cried Celia. In the confusion, snapped Sir Lionel. Lady Ashridge's face was a mask of horror. The curse! It is taken, and a man is dead. Oh, Poirot! Oh, Monsieur Poirot! You must find it! Poirot's eyes narrowed. In that instant, I saw the change come over him. The languor dropped away. The mind engaged. He held up his hand. Silence, if you please. First, we do not say curse. We say crime. Second, no one leaves this room until I have looked. Third, we will not touch anything. Major Blake laughed incredulously. You cannot keep us here, man. Poirot's voice became unexpectedly cold. I can, Major, because if the jewel is stolen, the thief is among us. And if the man is murdered, the murderer is among us. If you leave, you may destroy the little trace, and then, perhaps, the police will keep you not in a room, but in a cell. That had its effect. Everyone stood, restless and pale, while Poirot, with a swift, methodical movement, examined Lady Ashridge's dress. The clasp was broken. Not unpinned, he murmured. Broken. Force. He moved to the doorway. Hastings, you will stand there. No one passes. I confess I felt a certain thrill at being so employed, as if I were again a young officer on duty. Poirot searched the room in an orderly fashion, not missing the obvious, not neglecting the corner. He examined the decanter, the glasses, the desk. He looked beneath the furniture, behind the curtains. At last he straightened. It is not here. Lady Ashridge's breath came in little gasps. Then it is gone. Gone. And the dead man. Oh, this is dreadful. Poirot's eyes moved to Sir Lionel. Monsieur, the papers you took. Perhaps they are not routine. Perhaps they are connected. Sir Lionel's jaw tightened. They are private. Poirot spread his hands. As you wish. But remember, it is often the private that kills. At that moment, the sound of a motor car came up the drive. Inspector Keene arrived, accompanied by a constable. He was a solid man with a square jaw and the air of one who had dealt with poachers and drunken farmhands, but not perhaps with curses and cameos. He looked at Poirot with a mixture of relief and suspicion. Monsieur Poirot, I have heard of you. This is a nasty business. Doctor says poison. Poirot bowed. Inspector, you will do well, but you will need also the psychology. See, already there is a theft. The jewel is gone. Inspector Keene whistled. Stolen. After the murder. Or before, said Poirot quietly. Inspector Keene blinked. What do you mean? Poirot looked at the dead man, then at Lady Ashridge, and his voice, though mild, had an edge like a knife. I mean, Inspector, that perhaps the jewel was not stolen in the confusion. Perhaps the confusion was made to hide the theft. Chapter 3. A House of Secrets. By the next morning, Ashridge Hall had become a place of hushed voices and closed doors. Servants moved as if on tiptoe. The breakfast table, usually the scene of cheerful chatter, was subdued. Lady Ashridge did not appear at all. Sir Lionel sat grim and silent, his eyes shadowed. Verity picked at her toast. Celia attempted gaiety and failed. Duval smoked and watched everyone with amused detachment. Reverend Lorne murmured something about prayers. Major Blake demanded more coffee and muttered about modern degeneracy. Poirot ate little. He sat, his fingers steepled, his gaze on the pattern of the tablecloth as if it held a map. After breakfast, Inspector Keene convened us in the library, which had been aired and tidied, but still seemed to carry the memory of death. Mr. Farrow's body had been removed. The green lamp still cast its pool of light upon the desk, like a spotlight awaiting the next performance. Inspector Keene cleared his throat. Dr. Trent will give the medical facts. Trent adjusted his pince-nez. Death occurred within minutes of ingestion. I have no doubt it was prussic acid, cyanide. It could have been in the brandy. The smell was evident. Mr. Farrow also had, in his pocket, a small bottle, empty. It is possible he took it himself. A suicide, said Inspector Keene. Celia gave a little gasp. Oh no, how ghastly. Poirot spoke softly. And yet, Inspector, there is also the button, torn from a coat. How does that fit with suicide? Keene frowned. Could have come off his own clothing. Poirot held it up. It is too large for his suit. And the rim, gold. It is from a coat, an overcoat, perhaps a lady's cloak, perhaps a gentleman's evening coat. Major Blake thumped the arm of his chair. Then it is murder. Some scoundrel put the poison in his drink, or forced it on him. Keene nodded. That is what we must determine. Also the matter of the jewel. Lady Ashridge says it was pinned to her dress. Now it is gone. He looked around. I shall question each of you. Your movements last night. Any knowledge of Mr. Farrow's business here? Sir Lionel's mouth tightened. He was my solicitor. He handled family affairs. Was he expected? Asked Keene. No, he came without warning. Verity's voice was low. He said it was urgent. Keene glanced sharply. How do you know? Verity's eyes flickered. I heard him in the hall. I was coming down. Miss Henslow spoke to him. Inspector Keene made a note. He began with Celia, who declared she had not left the drawing-room except to go to the lavatory. Then Duval, who said he had smoked on the terrace for 10 minutes alone. Major Blake admitted he had gone to the smoking room to fetch his case. Reverend Lorne said he had stepped into the hall to speak to a servant about a parish matter. Dr. Trent had indeed been called away. Then came Miss Henslow. She sat straight, hands folded. I brought Mr. Farrow to the library. I gave him brandy. I left him. I returned to the drawing-room. Did you handle the glass? Asked Keene. Yes. I poured the brandy. From the decanter. Poirot's eyes were on her face. And did you pour with the right hand or the left, mademoiselle? Miss Henslow blinked. My right. Poirot nodded, as if it were the most important thing in the world. Sir Lionel was next, and his answers were curt. I was in the drawing-room. When we heard the servant, I came at once, that is all. Keene leaned forward. Mr. Farrow had papers. Did you know what they were? Sir Lionel's hand went to his pocket instinctively, then dropped. Private. Family. Keene's gaze hardened. Murder makes private things public, Sir Lionel. Sir Lionel's lips thinned. You will have them when my lawyer arrives. Poirot murmured, Ah, a lawyer who wishes to keep away the papers of a lawyer. It is amusing. Verity's interview was strained. She maintained she had gone to her room with a headache at 10:30 and had not left it until the commotion. Her maid corroborated that she had called for powders. Yet there was something in her eyes, a tightness, that made me uneasy. Lady Ashridge, when she came down at last, was dramatic. She wore a dressing gown of peacock silk and looked as if she had not slept. "I tell you, Inspector, it is the curse. That man died because the cameo demanded payment, and now it is gone. I am ruined." Keen's patience was thin. "Madam, curses do not leave footprints. People do." Poirot's voice, however, was soothing. "Madame, you will permit that we search. The jewel cannot leave the house without passing the servants or the guests. It is somewhere. It is hidden. Perhaps it waits to be sold. Perhaps it waits to be returned." Lady Ashridge clutched her hands. "Find it, Poirot. Find it, and find who did this. I cannot bear it." The day passed in a flurry of activity. Inspector Keen posted a constable at the drive. Servants were questioned. Rooms were searched. The house, which had felt so luxurious, now felt like a ship under quarantine. Poirot moved through it with his usual method. He did not rummage. He observed. He asked odd little questions. He inquired of the butler how Lady Ashridge took her tea. He asked the maid what perfume Verity used. He asked the gardener whether the terrace doors were locked at night. He spoke with the footman about where he had stood during dinner. He asked Celia what colour gloves she had worn. To me, these things seemed irrelevant. I confess I was impatient. "Poirot," I said, when we were alone in the corridor near the billiard room, "surely the important thing is the poison, the brandy. Who had access to the decanter?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Ah, Hastings, always you wish for the obvious. You see a pistol, you cry, 'The man with the pistol.' But perhaps the pistol is a decoration. Perhaps the murderer is the man with the smile. The poison. Yes, it is important. But tell me, who poured the brandy?" "Miss Henslow," I admitted. "And who placed the decanter in the library?" "The servants." "Who may have touched it before the servants? Who may have asked for brandy there earlier? Who may have had the key to the sideboard?" I stared. The key. Poirot nodded. "In a house, Hastings, there are always keys. Lady Ashridge keeps many. She likes to control. But there are also duplicates. There is always disorder beneath the order. Now, let us speak of Farrow. Why did he come? He came urgent, to see Sir Lionel. Yet Sir Lionel did not meet him. Why? I felt the first chill of suspicion. Perhaps Sir Lionel did meet him, secretly. May we? Or perhaps he avoided him, because Farrow carried something unpleasant, something that could ruin, like, for example, a packet of letters. At that moment, as if conjured by Poirot's words, we heard voices from behind a half-closed door. It was the morning room. Poirot put up a finger and drew me back. Inside we heard Lady Ashridge, her voice shrill. You cannot take them! They are mine!" Sir Lionel's voice was hard. "They concern my father's estate. He kept them from me. You will hand them over." "I tell you, I burned them." There was a pause. "You lie," said Sir Lionel. Then a softer voice, Verity. "Lionel, not now." Poirot drew me away quietly. "Aha," he murmured. "Letters. Burned. Or not burned. And you see, Hastings, already there is a second secret. Not the jewel, not the poison. Another thing. And in a house like this, secrets are like mice. Where there is one, there are many." That afternoon, Celia March sought me out in the rose garden. She was pale, her bright manner dimmed. "Captain Hastings," she said, "you are brave. You have been in wars. Tell me truly, is it safe here?" "Nonsense," I said stoutly, though I confess I did not feel stout. "Inspector Keen is here, and Poirot. Nothing will happen." Her eyes filled. "I am frightened." Lady Ashridge told me, you know. She told me the story. The cameo belonged to a woman who poisoned her lovers, and every time it changes hands, someone dies. It is always poison. Always. Superstition, I said. She touched my sleeve. Captain Hastings, you are kind. Will you walk with me? I cannot bear to be alone. I am, I fear, susceptible to a pretty face. We walked among the late roses. She spoke in little bursts. Monsieur Duval is such a darling, but he has an awful temper. He and Sir Lionel quarrelled last night. About money, I think, and Miss Henslow. She watches everyone. She is like a cat. I do not like her. As she spoke, I saw, across the lawn, Miss Henslow herself, walking briskly towards the stables, a packet of papers in her hand. She glanced about, and for a second our eyes met. Then she slipped into the stable office. A packet of papers, I murmured. Poirot was right. Celia shivered. Everything is papers here. Letters, notes, threats, and now death. Oh, Captain Hastings. I patted her hand, feeling absurdly protective, when a voice behind us made me start. Captain Hastings? We turned. It was Verity Ashridge. She stood very straight, her hands clenched around a pair of gloves. I beg your pardon, she said coldly, but I must speak with you, alone. Celia withdrew at once, eyes wide. Verity's gaze was like steel. You are Monsieur Poirot's friend. You will tell him something for me. Of course, I said. Her voice dropped. This house is full of lies. Do not let him think that the jewel is the only thing. There are other matters. If he does not find the truth, more people will die. Before I could reply, she turned and walked away, her skirt brushing the grass like a threat. I confess I was left entirely at sea. Chapter 4. The Unrelated Sin. That evening brought no comfort. Dinner was a strained affair. Lady Ashridge attempted bravado, wearing another piece of jewellery in place of the cameo, but it did not suit her. Sir Lionel ate little and drank much. Verity spoke hardly at all. Major Blake tried to lighten the mood with anecdotes of India, but his laugh boomed too loudly. Duval made graceful compliments and watched the room with half-lidded eyes. Celia looked ready to cry. Reverend Lorne prayed before the meal with particular fervour. Afterwards, people scattered. I found Poirot in the small smoking room, though he did not smoke. He stood by the mantel, rearranging the ornaments. Hastings, he said, without looking up. You have been walking in the roses. You have been listening to the young lady with the curls, and you have seen something, n'est-ce pas? I stared. How on earth? Poirot turned, eyes bright. Your boots have the damp of the garden, and your face has the expression of a man who thinks he has discovered a plot. Come, tell me. I recounted Celia's gossip and Verity's warning. Poirot listened, his fingers smoothing his moustache. Oh, it is as I thought. There is the case of the jewel, there is the case of Pharaoh, and there is the case of the letters. 3 threads. They may be 1 rope, or they may be 3. We shall see. Surely, I said, the most suspicious is Duval, a foreigner. A quarrel. Money. Poirot sighed. Hastings, you have the soul of the police inspector. Always it is the foreigner. But look, Duval is too elegant to poison a man with clumsy cyanide in brandy. He would choose something more artistic. No. I do not say he is innocent. I say only, do not be so English. At that moment, there was a tap at the door. It opened, and Major Blake entered, his face flushed, his eyes wild. Poirot, he burst out. You must help me. It is a matter of honour. Poirot's eyebrows rose. Major, honour is often the excuse for foolishness. Sit down. breathe. Major Blake gripped the back of a chair. I have done something. Something damn stupid. I have been blackmailed. Poirot's eyes softened, but only slightly. Ah, blackmail. The other sin that walks beside murder. Major Blake swallowed. It began months ago, in London. Cards. I lost. More than I could pay. I borrowed. I lied. Then someone began sending letters, threatening to expose me, to ruin me, to tell the club. I paid, again and again. And now, here at Ashridge, I received another note this afternoon. He fumbled in his pocket and produced a letter. Poirot read it. Pay tonight or your debts are known. Poirot handed it back. And you think this is connected to the murder? Major Blake hesitated. I do not know, but I saw something. Last night, before the commotion, I went to the smoking room. On the way, I passed the library door. It was not quite shut. I saw a figure inside, bending over the table. A woman, I think. She wore a cloak, dark, with gold-rimmed buttons. Poirot's eyes sharpened. The button, I exclaimed. Major Blake nodded eagerly. Yes, when I heard the shouting later, I remembered. I thought at once, that is the blackmailer. That is the thief. And now, perhaps, the murderer. Poirot held up a hand. Calmly. You did not speak of this to the inspector? Major Blake flushed. I could not with my own scandal. If he knew I was being blackmailed, I would be finished. Poirot nodded. So you come to me. It is well. But understand, this blackmail, it may be connected, or it may be not. It may be, as we say, the red herring, the fish that smells and makes you look away. But the detail of the buttons, that is of interest. Major Blake leaned forward, voice hoarse. Poirot, I will pay. I have the money, but I am afraid. If I pay, I may be killed. If I do not pay, I am ruined. Poirot's face became very grave. Major, when one is blackmailed, one is already ruined. But one may still choose how one falls. Leave this to me. You will do nothing. You will not pay. You will not meet anyone alone. Do you understand? Major Blake hesitated, then nodded. Very well. When he had gone, I stared at Poirot. So Major Blake's blackmail is the unrelated secret, I said, pleased with myself. Poirot looked at me with a faint smile. Hastings, perhaps you are learning, but do not be too pleased. There is always another secret behind the secret. Now, we have a cloak with gold-rimmed buttons. Who wears such a thing? I thought at once of Verity. Her style was severe, yet Celia had spoken of gloves, not cloaks. Lady Ashridge wore extravagant wraps. Miss Henslow, practical, might have such an item. Poirot's voice was soft. We shall see. For now we sleep, and in the morning, perhaps, the house will present us with another surprise. He was right. Chapter 5. The Second Blow. I was woken in the early hours by a sharp knocking. Before I could fully gather myself, the door opened, and a maid, pale with terror, stood there. Oh, Captain Hastings! Oh, sir! Please come. It is Lady Ashridge. Something has happened. I snatched up my dressing gown and hurried out. In the corridor, Poirot emerged too, impeccably dressed even at such an hour, as if he had been waiting for fate. We followed the maid to Lady Ashridge's suite. The door was open. Inside, the air was thick with scent and fear. Lady Ashridge lay on her bed, propped up, her face chalk white. Dr. Trent was at her side, holding a glass. She has been given something, he said sharply. A sleeping draught. In her tisane. Poirot's eyes flashed. Not dead, I breathed, relief flooding me. No, said Trent. but very near. Another spoonful and we might be speaking differently." Lady Ashridge's eyes fluttered open. She saw Poirot and began to weep. "They tried to kill me," she whispered. "The curse, it wants me." Poirot took her hand. "Madame, listen. Who brought you the tisane?" "My maid," she murmured. "Elsie. She always does." The maid, Elsie, stood trembling. "I did, milady. But I swear I put nothing. I made it as always, in the pantry." Poirot's voice was gentle but firm. "In the pantry? And did you leave it alone?" Elsie's eyes widened. "Only a moment, sir." The bell rang. I went to answer. When I came back, it was there. Poirot nodded. "So someone had the moment. Someone knows that Madame takes tisane. Someone wished her asleep. Or dead. Why?" Dr. Trent straightened. "This is no childish game now. We must lock up the medicines, the kitchen, everything." Inspector Keene arrived, roused and irritable, and took charge. He questioned the maid, ordered the pantry searched, and posted another constable. Poirot, however, did not seem surprised. He walked to the bedside table. On it was the cup, half empty. He sniffed it, then set it down. His gaze moved to the window. It was slightly open. "Did you open it, madame?" he asked. Lady Ashridge shook her head feebly. "No, I hate draughts." Poirot leaned closer, peering at the latch. "Interesting." I saw then that the latch bore a faint smear, as if a hand had pushed it, and on the sill a speck of red, like dried wax. "Blood," I whispered. Poirot shook his head. "Not blood, wax, red wax, like sealing wax." My mind leapt to letters, seals, packets. The curse of the Crimson Cameo seemed suddenly less supernatural and more like a business. As we left the room, we passed Miss Henslow in the corridor. She carried a tray of papers, her face set. "Mademoiselle," Poirot said softly, "you work late." She paused. "There is much to do, Monsieur Poirot. Notes to answer, arrangements." "And you have not slept?" "I have slept enough." Poirot's eyes were kind but sharp. "Be careful, mademoiselle. In a house of secrets, those who carry papers may carry danger." For a moment, something flickered in her face. Fear, perhaps, or anger. Then it was gone. "I shall be careful," she said, and walked on. I turned to Poirot. "She is suspicious," I said eagerly. "She had access to the brandy. She handles letters. She might wear a cloak with gold-rimmed buttons." Poirot sighed. "Hastings, you see again the obvious. It may be that she is suspicious. It may be that she is only a woman who has had to be hard in order to live. We do not condemn, we observe." Later that morning, a new development shook the house. Inspector Keene came to Poirot with a grim face. "There is more," he said. "We have found something missing. Not only the cameo. A packet of letters is gone from Lady Ashridge's safe." Lady Ashridge, when told, screamed. "My letters! My private letters! Oh, I am finished!" Sir Lionel's face went grey. "The letters," he whispered. "So Pharaoh did come about that." Poirot leaned forward. "Ah, so you admit, Sir Lionel, that Pharaoh brought letters?" Sir Lionel stared at him, then at the inspector, and seemed to sag. "Yes," he said dully. "He brought them. He meant to show me. He said my father's will was not the whole truth, that there were letters. Letters that proved something. That proved Lady Ashridge had deceived us." Lady Ashridge sprang up in bed, wild. "Lies! He is lying!" Poirot's voice was calm. "And now the letters are gone. because someone fears what they contain, or someone desires what they can buy. Inspector, you see. The jewel, the letters, the murder, they are tied. Inspector Keene nodded slowly. And now, attempted murder. Someone is determined. Poirot's gaze was far away. Yes, he murmured. And when someone is determined, Hastings, they become careless. That is when the little grey cells triumph. Chapter 6. The Crimson Wax. That afternoon, Poirot asked me to accompany him to the village. We drove in Sir Lionel's motor car, a glossy black machine that seemed to purr with restrained arrogance. The road wound through hedgerows and small fields, where cows stood like sleepy sentries. The village of Market Ashridge was charming in the way of such places, with a church spire, a pub, and cottages with thatched roofs. It seemed impossible that murder could touch it. Poirot, however, is never fooled by charm. We first visited the post office, where Poirot asked, with great politeness, about deliveries. The postmistress, delighted to speak to a famous detective, told us that there had been several telegrams and letters for Ashridge Hall. Poirot inquired particularly about letters sealed with red wax. "Red wax," repeated the postmistress. "Yes, indeed. There was one yesterday. A thick envelope, very fine, addressed to Lady Ashridge. Came by special messenger, not the usual post." "A special messenger," Poirot murmured. "From where?" The postmistress frowned. "He said London, sir, but he had a foreign accent." Poirot thanked her and we left. In the street I burst out, "A foreign accent? Duval?" Poirot shook his head. "Hastings, you must stop seeing the world as a cricket match. English good, foreign suspect. No. But it is a thread." We next visited the chemist. Poirot spoke quietly with the chemist about sleeping draughts. He did not ask for names, he asked for quantities, for the sort of person who might purchase. The chemist, a nervous man, admitted that a bottle of chloral had been sold a week before. To whom, he could not recall. A lady? A gentleman? It was all hazy. Poirot did not press. He thanked him, and we returned to the car. "You see," I said impatiently, "we gain nothing. He cannot remember." Poirot smiled faintly. "We gain that someone bought chloral. That is something. Now, Hastings, we will do one more call." We went to the vicarage. Reverend Lorne greeted us with surprise, then with relief. "Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, please come in. This is a dreadful affair. The poor man and Lady Ashridge. I have prayed." Poirot's eyes were gentle. "Reverend, I come not to disturb your prayers, but to ask about your knowledge. You counsel many. You hear confessions." Reverend Lorne flushed. "I cannot speak of confessions." "Of course. But perhaps you can speak of impressions. The people of Ashridge Hall. Do you think one among them is capable of murder?" The Reverend hesitated, then sighed. "My son," he said, and in that moment he seemed older. Capable is a dangerous word. Under strain, any soul may crack. Sir Lionel is unhappy. Verity is unhappy. Lady Ashridge is afraid. Major Blake is desperate. And Miss Henslow, she is troubled." "Troubled?" repeated Poirot softly. "How?" The Reverend's eyes flickered towards the window. "She came to me last month, in tears. She spoke of a past mistake, of a man who wronged her. She said she wished to do something wicked, and yet she wished to be good. I advised her to leave, to seek peace. But she said she could not. She was bound." Poirot nodded slowly. "Bound? By what? By love? By hate? By money?" Reverend Lorne shook his head helplessly. "I do not know. She would not say. But she was like a person carrying a weight. Poirot thanked him, and we drove back in silence. I confess, my mind was in a ferment. Miss Henslow, a past mistake, a man who wronged her. Could that man be Poirot? Or Sir Lionel? Or someone else? Back at the house, the atmosphere was worse. Lady Ashridge was confined to her room, guarded. The guests were restless. Inspector Keene was irritated, the servants whispered. Poirot asked for everyone to assemble in the drawing room. They came reluctantly. Sir Lionel looked as if he had not slept. Verity's eyes were red-rimmed. Celia clutched a handkerchief. Duval lounged with forced ease. Major Blake's face was blotched. Miss Henslow stood near the window, calm but pale. Reverend Lorne held his hat in both hands like a shield. Poirot stood before them, his moustache perfect, his manner mild. "Mesdames and messieurs," he said, "we have had murder, we have had theft, we have had an attempt at murder. In such circumstances, it is necessary that we speak plainly." Inspector Keene shifted, but said nothing. He had, I think, begun to recognize that Poirot was in command. Poirot held up the gold-rimmed button. This was found by the body of Mr. Farrow. Major Blake tells me he saw, in the library before the death was discovered, a figure wearing a dark cloak with buttons like this. A murmur ran round the room. Eyes darted. Major Blake looked ashamed but resolute. Poirot continued. "Now, there is such a cloak in this house. I have seen it." Verity stiffened. Poirot's gaze moved, not to Verity, but to Lady Ashridge's empty chair. "It belongs," said Poirot softly, "to Lady Ashridge." Celia gasped. "But Lady Ashridge was with us." Poirot nodded. "Oui, she was with you. But the cloak, it was taken. By someone who had access to her rooms, by someone who wished to be seen as a woman, or to be not seen at all. And the button was torn, in a struggle. A struggle not with Farrow, perhaps, but with someone else." Sir Lionel's voice was harsh. "You are saying Lady Ashridge murdered him?" Poirot shook his head. "I say only, the cloak was used. The cloak is a tool. And now there is another thing, the red wax on Lady Ashridge's windowsill. From a letter sealed with red wax, delivered by special messenger." Duval's eyes narrowed. "Red wax," he murmured. Poirot smiled. "Ah, Monsieur Duval, you are interested. Perhaps you have seen such wax. Perhaps you have used it." Duval shrugged. "In France, everyone uses wax. It is nothing." Poirot's eyes were bright. "Nothing, perhaps. Or perhaps it is the signature, the mark, like the curse, but made by a person. Now, one more piece." He moved to the small table and lifted a silver tray. On it lay a small object, wrapped in tissue. He unfolded it. There, glinting darkly, was the Crimson Cameo. A cry went up. Celia clapped her hands to her mouth. Sir Lionel lunged forward, then stopped. Verity's eyes widened. Miss Henslow's face went white. Lady Ashridge's voice, faint from the doorway, where she stood supported by her maid, trembled. "My cameo. You found it?" Poirot nodded. "Yes, madame. It was hidden. Not in a safe, not in a drawer, but in the most obvious place, in the lining of the cloak." Inspector Keene exclaimed, "In the cloak? Then whoever took the cloak hid it there." Poirot's voice was soft, and in that softness was menace. "Precisely, Inspector. And the person who hid it there did so because they knew the cloak would not be searched, because it belongs to Lady Ashridge. And now the question is, who took it? Who used it? Who returned it? And why?" A silence fell. Then suddenly a servant burst in, breathless. "Monsieur Poirot, Inspector, there is something in the stable office. Miss Henslow's papers. We found them burned, and a man is there. He is alive, but he is tied." Miss Henslow gave a choked sound. Poirot's eyes flashed. "Hastings," he said sharply, "we go." We ran, down corridors, through the hall, out to the courtyard where the stables stood. The air was sharp with the smell of straw and cold. Inside the office, a man lay on the floor, bound and gagged. His eyes were wild. Poirot knelt and removed the gag. The man gasped. "Help! They tried to kill me. I am the messenger. I brought the letter with the red wax. And then she came, the secretary, Miss Henslow. She said she would pay me. Then someone struck me. They burned the papers." Poirot's face was very still. "And did you see who struck you?" The messenger swallowed. "It was not her. It was a man. A tall man, with a limp." Major Blake, behind us, gave a strangled cry. All eyes turned to him. Poirot's voice was quiet as snow. "Major, you have a limp?" Major Blake's face contorted. No, it is not what you think." Poirot rose slowly. "Eh bien, perhaps it is not. But now, Hastings, we have danger. Because the person who burns papers and binds a messenger is not finished. And tonight, perhaps, they will strike again." Part 2, Chapter 7. The Little Grey Cells Awaken. For a moment after the messenger's accusation, the stable office seemed to shrink. Straw dust hung in the air like powder smoke. Major Blake's face had gone the colour of old putty. His mouth opened and closed, yet no words came at once. I confess that my own thoughts were in a furious gallop. A tall man with a limp. Major Blake had a limp. Therefore Major Blake. It appeared as plain as a parade ground diagram. Poirot, however, did not move as a man who has found the answer. He moved as a man who has found a question. "Inspector," he said quietly, "take the messenger to the house. Give him brandy if Dr. Trent permits. And now, Major, you will come also. We shall talk. In a room with chairs, not hay." Inspector Keem's hand went to the Major's arm. "You will not leave, sir." Major Blake swallowed. "I have done nothing. On my honour." Poirot's eyes were bright. "On your honour, Major? You came to me with blackmail. That was honest in a way. But now, perhaps, someone uses your limp as one uses a mask. Come." We returned to the house. I walked behind with Poirot, my mind a tangle. The cameo had been found in Lady Ashridge's cloak. The messenger had been attacked. Papers had been burned in the stable office, and those papers had been connected to Miss Henslow. And now Major Blake stood in the centre of it all, like a man under a spotlight. In the small morning room, Inspector Keene began at once. "Major Blake, where were you this afternoon between 2 and 4? Major Blake's eyes flickered. "In my room, reading." "Alone?" "Yes." "Did anyone see you?" "No." Inspector Keene's mouth tightened. "And your limp? Is it from war?" Major Blake flushed. "A wound, yes." Poirot interposed gently. "Inspector, permit me. Major, when you came to me last night, you spoke of the figure in the library, a woman in a cloak. You said the buttons had gold rims. You were certain?" Major Blake nodded miserably. "I saw the buttons catch the light." "And you did not see the face?" "No." Poirot leaned forward. "Major, you have been frightened for months by blackmail. You have been desperate. A desperate man sees what he expects. Are you sure you did not expect to see a woman? Because it is less shameful, perhaps, to be blackmailed by a woman." Major Blake stared, as though the idea had never occurred. I do not know." Poirot's voice softened. "The truth, Major. Who wrote the blackmail notes? Major Blake's hands clenched. I do not know. They were printed, like the curse note.
Poirot's moustache quivered.
Ah, printed. Block capitals. So, perhaps the same hand. Perhaps two hands. We shall see. But now, something else. The messenger says a tall man with a limp struck him. Inspector, is it possible for a man to imitate a limp? Inspector Keene grunted. Anything's possible.
But why?
Poirot's eyes flashed. To throw suspicion. To make the obvious. Hastings would be delighted. I could not help colouring. Poirot continued. Major, you will remain under watch, as is proper. But I do not yet say you are guilty. Inspector, there is more. The messenger says Miss Henslow spoke to him of payment.
Why?
Because she wished to buy silence, or because she wished to help him, or because she wished to lead him into a trap. We must ask her. Miss Henslow was sent for. When she entered, her composure was remarkable. Only the whiteness about her mouth betrayed strain. Inspector Keene demanded, What business had you with the messenger? She answered steadily. He brought a letter sealed with red wax. He said Lady Ashridge had sent for it, but it was not addressed. It was only marked, for Madame Ashridge, urgent. He wanted payment beyond what he had been promised. I told him I would speak to Lady Ashridge and see that he was satisfied. I asked him to wait in the stable office where the servants would not hear. That is all. Poirot's gaze held her. And the papers that were burned. Her eyes flickered at last. They were copies of letters. I had been making duplicates for filing. I do not know who burned them. I found the fire when I returned. Inspector Keene's voice was harsh. Why were you making copies of letters that were in Lady Ashridge's safe? Miss Henslow hesitated. Because she asked me. She said the letters were important, that she feared they might be stolen.
She wished copies.
Poirot nodded slowly. And what letters were they, mademoiselle? Miss Henslow's voice dropped. Letters from Sir Lionel's father, to Lady Ashridge, before she married him. Very personal. A murmur ran round the room. Sir Lionel's face tightened with disgust. Verity's eyes flashed like ice. Poirot spoke softly. And now they are stolen, and one man is dead, and a jewel is moved like a pawn. Mademoiselle, you are in the middle of the board. Miss Henslow met his gaze. I did not kill Mr. Farrow. Poirot inclined his head. I do not say you did. I say only, be careful. Someone burns your papers. Someone ties up your messenger. Someone wishes you to appear guilty. Why? There was a long pause. Then Poirot straightened, and I saw a sudden light in his eyes. It was as though an invisible click had sounded in his mind. Hastings, he said softly, almost to himself. I have been blind. I stared.
Blind? About what?
Poirot lifted the Crimson Cameo from the table where it lay, still wrapped. He held it so that the lamplight caught the carved profile. The red stone glowed like a held breath. This, he said, the cameo. Everyone says curse. Everyone says poison. Everyone says it demands a life. But what if it is not the cameo that is crimson? What if it is the wax? The wax, I repeated stupidly. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Red sealing wax. The letter by special messenger. The smear on the windowsill. The copies made by Miss Henslow. The burning of papers. Hastings. The cameo is not the motive. It is the distraction. The curse note. The blackmail note. Both printed. Both theatrical. The killer makes a little drama, and while you look at the jewel, he takes the letters. While you fear a curse, he commits a very human crime. Inspector Keene frowned. And the murder? Poirot nodded. The murder is to prevent the truth in those letters from coming to light, or to seize them. Farrow came urgent. He had papers. He was to show Sir Lionel. He died before he could. That is not curse. That is prevention. I felt a chill. Then who stands to gain from those letters? Poirot's voice was very quiet. Ask instead, mon ami, who stands to lose? Chapter 8. Poirot sets the trap. Poirot requested a private word with Inspector Keene. They withdrew to the corner of the library, speaking in low voices. I hovered, as I always do, hungry for a scrap. At last Poirot beckoned me. Now, Hastings, we make a little arrangement, a stratagem. The killer is clever, but also vain. He believes he writes the play. We will let him think so. What shall we do? Poirot's eyes twinkled. We will announce that we have found not only the cameo, but the letters, and that tonight, after dinner, I shall read them to everyone. In the drawing-room, a most delicious scandal. Lady Ashridge will faint. Sir Lionel will roar. Verity will freeze. And the killer will act. Inspector Keene grunted. That's dangerous. If you stir them up, there may be another death. Poirot's face hardened. Inspector, there will be another attempt in any case. Better when we watch. Order and method. So it was arranged. Lady Ashridge, though still weak, was induced to appear at dinner. She wore a crimson shawl, no doubt in homage to her missing jewel, and she trembled with indignation when Poirot calmly informed her that he would be speaking of letters. You cannot, she hissed. Poirot bowed. Madame, I can, because people have died for these letters. The least they deserve is daylight. Dinner that night was like eating in a room full of loaded pistols. No one met anyone's eyes for long. The servants poured wine with hands that shook. Outside the wind rose and scraped branches against the windows. After dinner, as promised, we assembled in the drawing-room. The fire was lit. The lamps made pools of honeyed light. Yet the shadows seemed to crowd closer than before. Poirot stood by the mantel. Mesdames and messieurs, he began, tonight we speak of truth. I have said that I possess the letters stolen from Lady Ashridge's safe. I do not yet possess them, but I say so because I wish to observe. Sir Lionel's face went dark. You play games. Poirot's voice remained mild. No, I play psychology. The killer, when he hears this, will think, if Poirot reads the letters, I am ruined. Therefore I must stop him. Verity spoke, her voice like glass. And if the letters are lies? Poirot turned to her. Then you have nothing to fear, madame. Her eyes did not flicker. Fear is not always for oneself. Poirot lifted a hand. You see, already the little phrases, the little reactions. Now, I will make it more interesting. I will say what I believe those letters contain. Lady Ashridge made a small, strangled sound. Poirot continued. They concern the late Lord Ashridge. They are written before his marriage to Lady Ashridge. They speak of money, of inheritance, of obligation, of a child. The word fell like a stone into a pond. Ripples spread. Celia gasped. Reverend Lorne crossed himself. Major Blake stared as if struck. Dr. Trent's eyes narrowed. Sir Lionel went rigid. What child? Lady Ashridge sprang up, wild. There was no child. It is a slander, a filthy slander. Poirot's gaze was steady. Madame, you protest too much. And you, Sir Lionel, your father kept something from you. Perhaps that something is that you are not the only heir. Perhaps there is someone else. Someone who could claim, someone who would gain if you were disgraced. Sir Lionel's hands clenched. Who? Poirot smiled faintly. That is what we shall discover. But tonight I will not read. I will only place the letters, sealed with red wax, in the library safe, and I will leave the key in a very obvious place. Here. He put a small key on the table beside the tea service. I saw Verity's gaze flick to it. So did Miss Henslow's. So did Duval's. So did Major Blake's, though he looked sick. Poirot's voice was almost careless. Inspector Keen will, of course, keep watch. And I also. So, if anyone wishes to steal, to destroy, to replace, they may try. We shall see who moves first. After a few minutes, under the strain, people made excuses and drifted away. Celia fled upstairs. Duval lit a cigarette and went to the terrace. Reverend Lorne asked permission to retire. Dr. Trent went to check on Lady Ashridge. Sir Lionel stalked out to the billiard room. Verity went to the staircase, her face unreadable. Miss Henslow remained a moment, her eyes on the key, then withdrew. At last only Poirot, Inspector Keen, a constable, and myself remained. Inspector Keen scoffed. You haven't got the letters? Poirot nodded. No, but the killer does not know. He believes I have them. He will come. He will come to the safe. And when he comes, we will see his face. And if he does not? I asked. Poirot's eyes glittered. Then I will have made the most interesting mistake of my life. We waited. The house creaked. The wind moaned. The fire settled with little sighs. It must have been close to midnight when a faint sound reached us. Not footsteps, but the soft scrape of a door latch. Poirot's hand went up. We listened. The sound came again, from the corridor leading to the library. Inspector Keen nodded to the constable. They moved like shadows. Poirot and I followed. The library door was ajar. Within, the green shaded lamp was lit, casting that same pool of light upon the desk as on the night of Pharaoh's death. A figure stood by the safe, its back to us. The figure wore a dark cloak. I felt my heart hammer. The cloak. The gold-rimmed buttons. Poirot stepped forward, and in that instant the figure spun. A flash of something silver in the hand, a small bottle. Poirot cried, "No!" The bottle flew towards the fireplace. It shattered. A sharp, bitter smell filled the air. Cyanide. Inspector Keen lunged. The figure darted past him with astonishing speed. The cloak tore. A button flew off and skittered across the carpet. Poirot seized my arm. "Hastings, after!" We raced into the corridor. The figure ran, limping exaggeratedly, towards the back staircase. A limp. A deliberate limp. A performance. Poirot was right. It was a mask. At the bottom of the stairs, the figure stumbled, the cloak caught, and for 1 second the hood fell back. I saw the face. It was Dr. Aldous Trent. Chapter 9. The Near Miss. I confess that for a heartbeat I could not comprehend what my eyes told me. Dr. Trent, the neat, dry physician, the man with pince-nez and calm voice. It was like seeing the vicar draw a revolver. Yet there he was, eyes wild now, no longer scholarly, but burning with a desperation that made him almost unrecognizable. Inspector Keen shouted, "Stop! In the name of the law!" Trent did not stop. He flung himself through the door to the surgery room off the corridor, a small room where he kept his medical bag when he visited. He slammed the door. We heard the bolt shoot. Poirot's voice was sharp. "He will destroy the evidence. Inspector, the door." The constable threw himself against it. The wood shook, held. Keen swore and began to kick at the lock. Inside we heard the scrape of drawers, the clink of glass, the frantic rustle of paper. Poirot leaned close to the keyhole and called, his voice suddenly gentle, almost sympathetic. "Doctor, it is finished. Do not add another crime. Open the door. Trent's voice came, hoarse. You do not understand. You do not understand what she did, what they did. I will not go to prison for them. Poirot's tone remained calm. You will go, Doctor, for yourself. The little grey cells have done their work. Open. There was a pause, then a sharp crack. The window in the surgery room flew open. I realized at once. He will escape through the garden, I cried. Poirot shook his head. He will try. Hastings, you go outside. Hurry. I ran down the corridor, out through the side door, and into the chill night. The wind struck my face like a slap. The garden was a blur of hedges and moonlit lawn. The surgery window was above me, open like a dark mouth. A shape appeared. Trent began to climb out, his coat flapping, his face white in the moonlight. He dropped awkwardly, and for a second he truly limped, for he had twisted his ankle. He steadied himself, then began to run across the lawn towards the shrubbery. I shouted and sprinted after him. My military instincts, thank heaven, had not deserted me. Yet he had a head start. The lawn seemed endless. My breath tore at my chest. Ahead, the dark mass of the yew hedge loomed, a perfect place to vanish. Then, from the side, a figure stepped out in his path. It was Major Blake, despite the constable assigned to watch him. He held a heavy garden spade. His face was set in grim determination. "Stop!" he roared. Trent swerved, and Blake swung the spade. It caught Trent's shoulder. Trent cried out and fell. In the same moment, Poirot and Inspector Keene burst out from the side door behind me. Keene threw himself on Trent. The constable followed. Trent struggled, then sagged, sobbing, his pince-nez hanging crooked, his dignity shattered. Poirot approached slowly. He looked down at Trent with an expression not of triumph, but of weary pity. "Sacré," he murmured. "The doctor. Always the doctor, Hastings. He has the knowledge, he has the access, and he believes himself above suspicion." Major Blake stood panting, still gripping the spade. "I could not stay in my room," he said hoarsely. "Not when you said someone would act. I wanted to prove I was not your villain." Poirot nodded. "You have proved you are brave, also that you do not obey instructions, but this time it is fortunate." Trent was hauled to his feet. Keene snapped the handcuffs on. "You're under arrest for the murder of Mr. Farrow and the attempted murder of Lady Ashridge, and theft." Trent lifted his head, eyes blazing again. "You think you have it all. You do not. You do not know why." Poirot's voice was quiet. "Oh, but I know much. Not all. Not yet. The motive is always the heart, and the heart is complicated. Come, Doctor. We will talk in the library, with everyone. It is time for the gathering." Chapter 10. The Gathering in the Drawing Room. The next morning, though everyone had slept little, Poirot insisted that all the guests and principal servants assemble in the drawing room at 11. Lady Ashridge, wrapped in shawls and indignation, was carried down to a chaise longue. Sir Lionel stood by the fireplace, rigid. Verity sat very straight, hands folded, eyes fixed on nothing. Celia looked as though she might faint at any moment. Duval lounged with his usual grace, though his cigarette trembled slightly. Reverend Lorne hovered near the door, as if he might be called to perform last rites. Major Blake stood to one side, sullen. Miss Henslow remained near the window, composed, but with that tightness again about her mouth. Inspector Keene stood by the mantel, severe. Dr. Trent sat in a chair under guard, his hands cuffed, his face grey and drawn. Poirot, immaculate, stood before them like a conductor before an orchestra. "Mesdames and messieurs," he began, "we will now put in order this affair. It is necessary. Without order, there is only fear and superstition. Lady Ashridge speaks of a curse. But there is no curse. There is only a man. A clever man, yes, with knowledge of poisons and nerves, but still only a man. Lady Ashridge let out a little sob. My cameo. My beautiful cameo. Poirot inclined his head. Yes, madame, the Crimson Cameo. It was used as the decoration of the play, the actor's prop. But it was not the motive. The motive lay elsewhere, in letters. Sir Lionel's jaw tightened. The letters from my father. Precisely, said Poirot. Let us begin at the beginning. He paced slowly as he spoke, hands behind his back. Lady Ashridge acquired the cameo at auction. She invited guests. She announced it. She wished admiration. That brought also attention. Someone, already in the house party, wrote the curse note. Printed. Dramatic. Why? To make Lady Ashridge frightened, distracted, and to create an atmosphere where any misfortune could be blamed on superstition. Celia whispered, How horrible, Poirot continued. Now Mr. Farrow, the solicitor, arrived. Why did he arrive? Because he had discovered something, not about the cameo, but about the late Lord Ashridge's papers. He carried with him letters and documents. He intended to show them to Sir Lionel. Those papers would cause scandal. They would change inheritances. They would ruin someone. Verity's eyes flickered at last, sharp as a knife. Poirot's voice remained calm. Mr. Farrow was brought to the library by Miss Henslow. She poured brandy from the decanter. The decanter had already been prepared. How? By a man with access to the library, to medicines, to knowledge of poison, and to the habits of the house. Dr. Trent. Dr. Trent's mouth twisted. You cannot prove. Poirot smiled faintly. We shall. But first, the mechanics. Cyanide was introduced into the brandy glass. Not by Miss Henslow at the moment of pouring. She poured from the decanter, yes, but cyanide was not in the decanter. If it were, others might have used it and died. No, it was in the glass. How? A tiny crystal placed under the rim so that when brandy was poured, it dissolved. The smell of almonds would come at once. Death at once. Dr. Trent knew this. He wished Farrow dead quickly, before he could speak. Inspector Keene grunted. That fits the medical. Poirot nodded. Mr. Farrow drank. He died. In his last moment he struggled. Perhaps he saw someone. Perhaps he tried to rise. In that struggle, a button was torn from a cloak. Poirot lifted the gold-rimmed button. This button belonged to Lady Ashridge's evening cloak. The killer wore that cloak. Why? To appear as a woman if seen, to confuse a witness, and to ensure that if a clue was found, suspicion might fall on Lady Ashridge. Major Blake indeed saw a cloaked figure. He assumed woman. That assumption is natural. The killer counted on it. Major Blake muttered, Damn. Poirot's eyes turned to Lady Ashridge. Madame, your cloak was taken from your room while you were in the drawing-room. You did not notice. You were occupied with admiration and fear. The cameo was then removed from your dress by force during the commotion, not stolen in confusion, but taken deliberately and hidden later in the cloak lining. Why hide it there? Because everyone would hesitate to search Lady Ashridge's own garment. It was the perfect hiding place for a prop. Lady Ashridge clutched her shawl. And my letters. My safe. Poirot nodded. After Farrow's death, the killer needed the letters. Farrow had carried them. Sir Lionel seized some papers from the floor, but not all. The killer searched. Perhaps he found the packet in Farrow's case. Perhaps he did not. In any case, later he broke into your safe. Not difficult for a man who attends the house, who knows when you are asleep, who knows the servants' routines. He stole the packet and then attempted to destroy the evidence. He also attempted to silence you, madam, by putting chloral in your tisane, not to make you die at once, but to make you sleep while he searched, while he moved, while he arranged. Dr. Trent gave a harsh laugh. You paint me a melodrama. Poirot's eyes flashed. It was melodrama. You wrote the curse note. You wrote also the blackmail note to Major Blake, both printed, same style, same desire to control the stage. Major Blake's gambling debt was real, yes, but it was not connected to Faro. You exploited it. You threatened him. You made him frightened, and then you ensured that his limp would become useful to you. When you attacked the messenger, you imitated a limp, so that if he spoke, suspicion would go to Major Blake. That is what you call neat. Major Blake's face darkened with rage and shame. You swine. Poirot held up a hand. And now we come to the letter sealed with red wax, delivered by special messenger. Not by post. Why? Because it contained something the sender did not trust to ordinary channels. Something dangerous. Something urgent. It arrived on the day of the murder. It was addressed not by name, but as a weapon. For Madame Ashridge. The red wax was not only wax, it was a warning. The killer wished to seize that letter also. Duval spoke softly. Who sent it? Poirot turned to him. Ah, Monsieur Duval. You are interested because you have guessed something. But you are not our murderer. Your secret is different. You quarrelled with Sir Lionel about money because you lend money, n'est-ce pas, to those who are desperate. You are a charming usurer. Duval shrugged, smiling faintly. I prefer the word financier. Poirot inclined his head. That is the red herring number 1. Hastings suspected you because you are French and elegant, and because there was a quarrel. But your sin is only money, not murder. I coloured again. Poirot continued. And the red herring number 2 is Major Blake's blackmail. It is real. It is shameful. But it is not the heart of this case. It served only as a tool for Dr. Trent. Major Blake looked as if he might collapse, but Reverend Lorne murmured, We all have sins, in a voice of genuine kindness. Poirot's gaze moved to Miss Henslow. Mademoiselle, you too have a secret. Reverend Lorne knows you came to him in tears. You spoke of a man who wronged you. You felt bound. That is true, and it is connected. Not because you murdered, but because you were the reason the letters mattered. Miss Henslow's face went utterly still. Sir Lionel stared at her. What is he talking about? Poirot's voice softened. Sir Lionel, your father, the late Lord Ashridge, was not a saint. Before he married Lady Ashridge, he had an affair. A brief, selfish affair. There was a child. That child was given away quietly, with money, with shame, with silence. But the child grew, the child discovered, and the child came back to the world as an adult. That adult is here. A hush fell so complete that I heard the fire hiss. Poirot turned, not to Miss Henslow, but to Dr. Trent. Doctor, you knew. You knew who she was. That is why you wished the letters destroyed. Because if the truth was known, your position, your plans, your future would be in danger. Dr. Trent's face contorted. You know nothing of my plans. Poirot nodded. Then we will speak of them now. Chapter 11. The Reveal of the Crimson Cameo. Poirot stepped closer to Dr. Trent. His voice was quiet, but each word fell with a precision that made the room feel colder. Dr. Aldous Trent, you came to Ashridge Hall years ago as physician. You became trusted. You entered the family's inner life. You saw their weaknesses. You saw Lady Ashridge's vanity, Sir Lionel's frustration, Verity's pride. You saw opportunities. Trent's eyes burned. And you, little Belgian, think you can judge? Poirot spread his hands. I judge only facts. Here is one. You are not merely the doctor. You are also the man who intended to marry money. Lady Ashridge gave a choked cry. Marry? Who? Poirot's gaze swept the room and settled on Verity. Mrs. Verity Ashridge. Verity did not move. Only her hands tightened, white on white. Sir Lionel's voice cracked. Verity, that is absurd. Poirot's tone was mild. Is it? Verity married Sir Lionel for position and security, yes. But she discovered she had married not a man with a fortune, but a man with complications. An estate entangled, a stepmother extravagant, her father's secrets. She grew bitter. The doctor grew close. He soothed. He advised. He became indispensable. That is how such things happen, mon ami. Not with great passion always, but with familiarity, with shared resentment. Verity's voice came at last, low. You cannot prove that. Poirot nodded. Perhaps not in a court, but I do not need to prove love. I need to show motive. Dr. Trent believed that if Sir Lionel were ruined or removed, Verity could be free and money could be arranged. But then appeared the letters that could give another claimant to the estate, another heir. That would destroy everything. It would also expose the doctor's involvement, because there were further documents. Inspector Keene leaned forward. Further documents? Poirot nodded. Yes, Dr. Trent had borrowed money. Not from Monsieur Duval, from someone less elegant. He had speculated. He had debts. If he could secure Verity, and through Verity secure control, he believed he could repay. He had built his little castle. Then Farrow arrived with papers that would collapse it. Dr. Trent's mouth twisted into a snarl. He was going to blackmail her. Lady Ashridge. He was going to blackmail the whole house. Poirot shook his head. No, Farrow was a solicitor. He might have been opportunist, but he came to show Sir Lionel. Perhaps he felt it his duty at last. He came urgent because he had been sent a letter sealed with red wax. A letter from a woman who had proof of her birth. She demanded justice. That woman is Miss Dora Henslow. A gasp ran round the room. Celia stared. Reverend Lorne's eyes filled with tears. Sir Lionel looked as if the floor had fallen away. Miss Henslow spoke very quietly. Yes? Lady Ashridge's voice became shrill. Impossible! My husband! A child! Nonsense! Poirot turned to her. Madame, your anger is convenient, but the truth does not ask permission. Miss Henslow is the daughter of Lord Ashridge, and a woman he wronged. She was raised elsewhere. She learned later who her father was. She came first to Farrow. She brought him letters sealed with red wax. She asked him to see that justice was done. He agreed to bring the matter to Sir Lionel. Sir Lionel's voice was raw. Miss Henslow, is this true? She nodded, eyes shining with pain. I did not want scandal. I wanted acknowledgement. I wanted what he promised in writing, that I would not be left nothing, that I would not be treated as dirt. Poirot's voice softened. And that is why you came to Ashridge Hall. Lady Ashridge employed you as secretary because you were efficient, and because, perhaps, you had the look of someone who would not gossip. But she did not know who you were. You kept your identity hidden because you feared she would dismiss you if she knew. You copied letters because you feared they would be stolen. You asked the messenger to wait because you wished to settle payment without involving Lady Ashridge. You were caught in the storm, mademoiselle, but you were not the storm. Inspector Keene said sharply, Then Dr. Trent killed Farrow to stop this claim. Poirot nodded. Yes. He killed Farrow to prevent the letters being shown. He stole the packet from the safe to control it. He attempted to drug Lady Ashridge so he could search without interruption. He wrote the curse note to create hysteria. He wrote the blackmail note to Major Blake to make another suspect. He used Lady Ashridge's cloak so that a witness would speak of a woman. He imitated a limp to frame the Major when he attacked the messenger. Dr. Trent spat. "You are clever, but you do not know the last piece." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Eh bien? Then tell us, Doctor." Trent's gaze slid, hungry and hateful, to Verity. "She promised me," he snarled. "She promised if I helped her, if I removed obstacles, she would come with me. She wanted freedom. She wanted Lionel out of the way. I did what was necessary." Sir Lionel made a sound like a wounded animal. "Verity." Verity rose slowly. Her face was pale, but her eyes were steady. "You are lying," she said, and her voice was calm enough to frighten me more than shouting. "You did this. You and your poisons. Do not drag me into it." Poirot stepped between them with a small, decisive movement. "Madame, you do not need to shout. Your coldness says enough. But let us be just. Dr. Trent is the murderer. That is why he ran. That is why he threw the cyanide bottle. That is why his hands smell of chemicals even now. Inspector, you have the bottle he dropped earlier in the corridor. You will find his fingerprints, if you like such things. But for me, it is not that. It is his psychology. He could not bear loss of control. He arranged scenes. He framed. He dramatized. He used the curse because he believed others childish enough to fear it." Poirot turned to the table and lifted the Crimson Cameo again. "And this, the jewel. He hid it in the cloak lining so that the house would focus on theft. He returned it at my gathering so that he could watch the panic. He enjoyed that. Doctor, you enjoyed that." Trent's face twitched. "I enjoyed nothing." Poirot's voice was suddenly soft. "You enjoyed power. That is your poison, Doctor, not cyanide." Inspector Keene stepped forward. "That's enough. Dr. Trent, you are charged with murder and attempted murder. We'll take him to Market Ashridge and on to London." Trent sagged, as if his spine had been removed. As he was led away, Poirot turned to Miss Henslow. "Mademoiselle, the law will decide your claim, but I think Sir Lionel will not be a man to deny justice now that he knows." Sir Lionel's face was drawn, but he nodded stiffly. "My father's sins are not yours," he said to Miss Henslow, and there was something in his voice like grief. "If you are my sister, then you will not be cast out." Lady Ashridge made a strangled sound. "She will ruin us. The papers, the gossip." Poirot's eyes were cool. "Madame, you have lived by appearances. Now you will live by truth. It is less comfortable, but it is more honest." Verity sank back into her chair, as if all strength had left her. Celia began to cry quietly. Reverend Lorne murmured a prayer. Poirot stood very still, then spoke with finality. "And now we also explain the small mysteries. The button was from Lady Ashridge's cloak. The red wax was from Miss Henslow's sealed letter to Farrow. The blackmail of Major Blake was Dr. Trent's invention to create a suspect. Monsieur Duval's quarrel was about money, nothing more. The cameo's so-called curse was only a story used by a murderer to cover human greed and ambition." He looked at me. "Hastings, you see, the curse is always the heart." Chapter 12. Tisane and Aftermath. By evening, Ashridge Hall felt like a house after a storm. The air was clearer, as if the walls themselves had exhaled. Inspector Keene and the constable had taken Dr. Trent away. Servants moved more freely, yet no one laughed. Too much had been stripped away. Lady Ashridge remained in her room, complaining of nerves and humiliation. Sir Lionel shut himself in the study with Farrow's remaining papers, and when he emerged, he looked older. Verity retired early and did not appear again. Celia packed, declaring through tears that she could never look at a jewel again. Duval, with a little bow, told Poirot that England was charming but exhausting, and went to telephone for his motor. Major Blake, shamed but oddly relieved, asked Reverend Lorne to help him make arrangements to repay his debts honestly. As for Miss Henslow, she came to the library where Poirot and I sat. Poirot had made tisane, as he always does when the world has been messy and he wishes to restore order. The steam rose softly, scented with herbs. Miss Henslow stood before us, her hands folded. She looked suddenly younger, as if she had put down a heavy bundle. "Monsieur Poirot," she said quietly, "thank you. I did not want blood. I wanted only to be seen." Poirot inclined his head. "Mademoiselle, many crimes begin with that desire. To be seen, to be valued. It is very human." She hesitated. "Will Sir Lionel truly, will he accept?" Poirot's eyes were kind. "He is an Englishman, yes. He will suffer. He will also do what is right, because it is what will let him sleep. And you, mademoiselle, you must decide what you want. Money, name, or peace." She swallowed. "I want peace." Poirot nodded. "Then take it when it is offered. Do not wait for the world to become fair. It never does. One must take the small fairness one can." When she had gone, I sat for a moment in silence, watching Poirot stir his tisane with that exactness of his. "Poirot," I said at last, "I am ashamed. I suspected Duval, and Miss Henslow, and Major Blake. I never suspected Dr. Trent." Poirot smiled faintly. "Ah, Hastings. You suspected everyone who looked like a character in a melodrama. The foreigner, the secretary, the soldier with debts. But the true murderer was the man who appeared the most reasonable. The doctor. He knows the body. He knows the poisons. He comes and goes without remark. He is trusted. That is why, in mysteries, it is so often the doctor. It is a convenience for the criminal and a trap for the imagination." I shivered, thinking of that neat man's face in the moonlight. "And the Crimson Cameo," I said. "Will Lady Ashridge keep it?" Poirot's moustache quivered. "She will keep it, certainly. She will tell everyone that it nearly killed her. She will dine out on it for years. That is her nature. But perhaps now, when she touches it, she will think less of curses and more of consequences." Outside the window, the garden lay silvered by moonlight. Somewhere, an owl called. The great house stood quiet, its secrets, for the moment, laid bare. Poirot sipped his tisane and sighed. "Mon ami," he said, "people like to blame objects, a jewel, a curse, a fate. It is easier than admitting that the danger is always in the person who smiles and says, 'Trust me.'" I nodded slowly. "And yet," I said, trying to lighten my own gloom, "if there had been no cameo, there might have been no murder." Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Perhaps. But if there had been no cameo, there would have been something else. A will, a letter, a ring. The human heart is inventive. The little grey cells are necessary, always." We finished our tisane in companionable silence. In my mind, I saw again the red wax smear on the sill, the dramatic printed notes, the jewel glowing darkly against silver, the doctor's calm hand pouring death as easily as medicine. It was, as Poirot had said, not a curse. It was a choice, and so Hercule Poirot and the curse of the Crimson Cameo. In the end, the crimson was not in the stone, but in the shame and longing that men and women tried to seal away. Once again, Hercule Poirot has demonstrated that the truth lies not in the magnifying glass, but in the human heart. Until next time, mes amis, keep your grey cells sharp. Au revoir.